Welcome to the Happy Dog Podcast. This podcast is designed to bring you ideas and uplifting information to help you live a meaningful and fulfilled life with your dog from a holistic perspective. Now, let's explore the world of a happy dog. Welcome to a very special episode of the Happy Dog Podcast. I am here with Kathleen Prasad, and she is the founder of Animal Reiki Source and the president of the Shelter Animal Reiki Association. She's been a Reiki practitioner for over 20 years and teaches and shares the healing benefits of Reiki and meditation for animals and their caregivers. She's also created a very special method of animal Reiki called Let Animals Lead. So we'll learn a little bit more about that. And you can find her at animalreikisource.com, and we'll also share that information in the show notes as well. But thank you, Kathleen, for being on the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Of course. Yeah, we're happy that you're here. So let's get started with what the basics of Reiki are for those who might not know about it. Can you tell us what exactly Reiki is?
Sure. Reiki actually is a spiritual practice, but it has therapeutic applications. So basically what that means is it involves a series of meditation techniques and principles to live by. But it also has certain, we call them treatments or Reiki sessions, where with humans we would use hands-on contact, just sort of on certain parts of the body to help promote healing. And with animals, it's a little bit different, which I've learned over many years of practice.
Yeah.
But basically, the effects of Reiki are that they create peacefulness and stress relief and a sense of well-being. And they do that for us as practitioners, or when we practice these meditations or these different tools in the system of Reiki. But it also helps for our animals, because our animals, our dogs, are very sensitive to our inner balance or our way of being in the world. So they sense if we are angry, our emotional states. They sense if we are sad, or, if we're just feeling off that day. And so Reiki helps us learn how to balance ourselves and to balance our emotions and to balance our physical well-being. And so when we are in a more balanced space, our animals, it really helps them. And they can actually, if they're not feeling well, we can sort of radiate that peaceful, balanced space, and they can step into that because they're so sensitive and they are greatly affected by our way of being in the world. So I see Reiki as a beautiful way of, it's not just something that you do here and there in your life, but for me, Reiki is a way of life. It's a way of peace. It's a way of living in a space of gratitude. And also, when we work with animals and Reiki, it's a way of recognizing the wisdom of animals, the gifts that animals bring us, and seeing through an animal's illness or issue, whatever, seeing through to their beautiful, bright spirit that exists within. And that can be really helpful when our animals are facing a difficult health challenge, if we can see more deeply and remember who they are and not just what their illness is. So it's very healing for us as humans, but also for the animals that we share our lives with.
Definitely. I love that. And as somebody who has a sick dog with diabetes, I've used Reiki a few different times, and I totally agree with you on that, and to see past that with them, especially if it's a particularly tough time. And so Reiki, really, it's for people, it's for animals. How did you find Reiki and get into practicing it with animals?
Well, I actually found Reiki on my own personal healing journey. I suffered from severe anxiety and panic attacks from the time I was about 4 years old. And it was something that affected my life so that I would sort of not do things to avoid this crippling anxiety that I
Yes.
had. And so I just figured I have to live with this, but I just don't go on trips. I don't like to fly. I don't like to be don't go to a crowded restaurant. Don't go to anything where there's crowds. My life I managed it for many years. And then I got a Reiki treatment one day at the insistence of my mother-in-law, who had found some wonderful healing benefits from it for herself. And I thought it sounded kind of weird. And I'm like, that's not really my thing, but I guess since it's my mother-in-law, I have to humor her. So I got a Reiki treatment. And when I was laying on the table, within 5 minutes, I got so relaxed. I got like as relaxed as I would at the end of an hour-long massage. But it was only 5 minutes in. And this woman had just lightly rested her hands on me. And so I was like, this is like really interesting, because I was such a nervous person that to actually feel that relaxation was very hard to come by. So I knew almost immediately that this was like a cure for my anxiety. And so as soon as I got up off the table, I was like, how do I learn this? Because I could feel already, wow, what if I could do this for myself when I'm starting to, spiral into an anxiety attack? I could already tell that it was going to help me. So I learned almost immediately. I was practicing every single day, like every time I would feel anxious, which was a lot of the time, I would do some of the Reiki self-practice, and it really helped me to manage my anxiety. And over the period of about, maybe 6 or 7 years of working with this, I was able to actually completely heal my anxiety and panic attacks. And so that personal experience made me so passionate to be able to share this with animals. And I've done a lot of work with shelter dogs, and, they face anxiety and sometimes panic as well in that environment and from whatever background they've come from. And now they're in this confusing kennel environment, and it's loud and it's unfamiliar. And so I found early on, when I was practicing Reiki for my own anxiety, and I was volunteering walking dogs at a local shelter in San Francisco, and I would look in their eyes and I would be like, hey, I've been there. Like, I know how you're feeling right now, because that's how I spent most of my life feeling. And you know what? Reiki makes you feel better. And so I started sharing with them just because I related so much to their anxiety. And I would see these dogs respond just like I responded. They would be really scared and shaking. And then all of a sudden, as I shared Reiki, they would calm down, they would sit, they would lay down, they would stop panting. Many times they would even go to sleep. They would just be sort of overwhelmed by this sense of peacefulness, even in the middle of a kennel.
Yeah. Wow.
So I'm really grateful. Like, some people say, oh gosh, I have this problem, I have that issue. And they really beat themselves up about their own personal issues. But for me in my healing journey, I see my own personal struggles have become my strength for being able to help animals. And so I'm really grateful for that.
That's amazing. I love that. And so do you still work with shelter animals like on a regular basis currently?
So now I'm really excited because you mentioned in the beginning, I'm president of Shelter Animal Reiki Association.
Yes.
And so I actually have a group of students, of practitioners and teachers who have been trained by me and have been trained by my students. So we have kind of this tribe, and we've all been trained.
Yeah.
And there are hundreds of us now. There are about 400. We have about 400 members around the world. And our whole goal is going in and volunteering Reiki for shelter and sanctuary animals. And so not only am I able to go and share with shelter and sanctuary animals, but my students and this nonprofit is able to go and do it. So it's happening on a much bigger scale. In the beginning, it was just me sitting in the aisle, meditating in the kennel full of dogs in San Francisco, and people didn't understand what I was doing, and I was all alone. And now I have a team of hundreds of us, and we are all over the United States. We are in Canada. We are in England. We are in Australia. We are even in India.
Wow,
So
that's amazing.
We have people doing this all around the world. And what's so exciting is that we have dozens of organizations, different shelters, and different sanctuaries for all kinds of animals, exotic animals, farm animals, as well as cats and dogs and horse
That's
rescues.
so cool. Yeah.
They are finding the same response of peacefulness, well-being, helping them to calm and to get better from whatever they've been through. It's a really beautiful path of healing.
That's amazing. I love that. And so does that also tie into the let animals lead method that you've come up with?
Yes. So what's very special about the let animals lead method is it's almost the opposite of the approach that we use when we do human Reiki. So I've been trained in 3 different lineages by 3 different Reiki teachers for human Reiki. And I use human Reiki obviously for myself and for my family, for my daughter.
Yeah.
And it's been very helpful in my life. But I noticed when I would try to approach animals with that same sort of philosophy, with a human, we would lay down on a massage table, and then the practitioner would do hand positions on the body. Mm-hmm. So when I would work with animals, like with a dog, they would walk away. So I'd have to put them on a leash, and then I'm trying to do hand positions, and many dogs were uncomfortable and not really receptive to it. And at first I wondered, maybe are they not wanting Reiki? Are they, what's going on? But I soon realized it's not that they don't want to feel peaceful and relax, because I know they do, but it's my approach. My approach has to change because I have to meet them where they are instead of asking them to meet me in my human space. And so the let animals lead approach really means that I don't force anything on the animal. I do not force touch. The only time I use any touch in my treatments would be if an animal comes forward and sits in my lap or leans against my hands. But really what it looks like when I'm doing Reiki with an animal it's pretty boring, actually. I'm sitting and doing meditation with the animal. Yeah. Or if I'm with the horse, I might be standing in a pasture. The other thing that's really important too is with people, we often think about what's wrong. So like I would think, my anxiety, I want to heal my anxiety when I would be sitting and doing my Reiki sessions for myself. But animals, they don't like when we think about what's wrong with them. It can cause a lot of resistance, and they can actually just get up and leave the room. They're very sensitive to our thoughts. So the meditation that we use really focuses on seeing with your heart and seeing, as I said earlier, that beautiful light within. So if we're working with an animal who's very anxious, instead of focusing on that anxiety and maybe worrying about it and, can we make them feel better? Instead, we would look deeper and see their beautiful shining light, see, how perfect they are in this moment, and connect from that space. So being able to see an animal who maybe is in hospice, or who has cancer, or who has a broken leg, or who, like you said, your dog has diabetes. We train, and this system, the Let Animals Lead system, trains practitioners to actually see more deeply and to see that in this moment, all is well, you're perfect, and the peace exists. And so if we can learn how to hold that space, even in difficult moments, then animals are very drawn to that, and they come forward and want to connect. And basically what Reiki is doing is it's creating, through this connection of us kind of offering this meditation, the animal choosing to come forward and share it with us, it's creating this beautiful space of stress relief and relaxation and being completely at ease. And when our bodies, minds, and spirits are completely at ease, that's when we are in the ideal space to heal ourselves. So really what we're doing is creating a space to help the animal heal themselves. We're not actually sending healing to the animal or trying to fix this or that problem. We're just helping them to heal themselves.
Well, and there's an element of just being present that it has to do with, correct? That, it's
Absolutely.
Because animals are so in the moment, and that's what we as humans oftentimes get tripped up about or forget. So
Exactly. So if we can learn to just hold space
Yes.
for animals with mindfulness, with an open
Mm-hmm.
heart, without expectation, without trying to fix this and that problem,
Right.
then animals can lead their own way in healing. And
Mm-hmm.
that's really what makes this approach so special, is empowering animals and honoring animals for their own wisdom and their own ability to know what's best for them in that moment.
Yeah. Very, very special work for sure. And is there one story of like almost like a transformation that happened with an animal that really sticks out to you?
Yeah, one of the stories that I love to tell is about a pit bull, and this is in the very early days, and this pit bull was shaking uncontrollably. He had come into the shelter, I don't know, a couple of days before that, and just hadn't settled in at all, and so was basically crouched in the corner of the shelter, shaking uncontrollably. So when I went in, the staff said, "Oh, can you work with this dog? Because he's just not coming around and he's absolutely terrified." And so I said, "Okay, well, in that case, I thought he probably shouldn't be in the kennel." And we had a kitchen that we would work in sometimes. So I said, "Can someone bring him into the kitchen for me? And I think in that quiet environment, he would do better." Mm-hmm. So they put him on a leash and they walked him from the kennel to the kitchen. Now, keep in mind, he walked like a lizard. So in other words, his belly to the ground that whole way and shaking completely uncontrollably. So we get into the kitchen and they left, and I took his leash off because I always allow them to move freely and I do not force hands on. And I just put a blanket down. I sat in the middle and I started my meditation. And first he kind of just looked at me from far away and was very untrusting. And then he started to sniff the room a little bit, and he kind of was shaking still and still crouched, but he sniffed the room a little bit. And after about 5 minutes, he looked at me and he very slowly came over and he crawled into my lap. Now, this is like a 60-pound lap dog. So, that's a big. So he was still shaking uncontrollably, but he was leaning against me and just in my lap. So I just very gently rested my hands on him and continued my meditation. And I was really working on just all is well, you're perfect, you're beautiful, I love you, you're safe, all this sort of positivity in my mind, instead of pitying and being like, "Oh no, you poor thing, this is so sad." That's what can derail us mentally when we do that. So I was really working on being positive. And he shook and shook and shook. And after about maybe 10 or 15 minutes of sitting in my lap, he suddenly had a very even bigger shake. And then completely his whole body relaxed. He let go and he went, and he was completely still. All the shaking was gone and he went to sleep. And awesome. It was so dramatic. Yeah. I was kind of like, my eyes were like bugging out of my head. I couldn't believe, because to feel that shaking in your lap for like 10 or 15 minutes, it's very visceral, and you can feel just the anxiety coming off their body. So to feel him release that all in one breath, just goodbye, gone. And then be completely still. It was so beautiful. So amazing. I sat with him another maybe half an hour, and he's just slept very deeply and very relaxed. And then after he'd been in my lap for maybe 45 minutes or an hour, he kind of lifted his head and he looked around and he looked at me and he got up and he stretched and he yawned and he was done. And so I put him on the leash and I walked him down to the staff and I said, "Okay, we're done. You can put him back." And they looked at me like, "Who's that dog?" Yeah. I mean, he was nose shaking, standing, walking completely normally. They couldn't believe it was the same dog.
Amazing. That's awesome. Well, how does somebody get started practicing Reiki, for whether it's for themselves or other animals like that who want to help shelter dogs?
So Reiki is a system of practice, and it's actually started in Japan. And so it has a bunch of sort of Japanese techniques that you work with and use and learn. And so I have sort of two answers to the question. If you want to kind of start kind of familiarizing yourself with the philosophy and learn a little bit about meditating with your dog, then you can get my book, Reiki for Dogs, and that's on Amazon. And that has meditations you can start right now. It has the principles that we work with, so you can familiarize yourself and kind of dip your toe in.
I have that book and it's great. Side note.
Awesome. Yay. Good. And then my second answer is that you want to get certified, because in order for you to have all the tools of the system of Reiki so that you understand it fully, and you're connected to our community, to our lineage, then you have to get certified by a Reiki teacher. So what I recommend is that you find either me or one of my students who practice the Let Animals Lead method. But you can't always do that. Sometimes the only person in your area practices Reiki with people, which is fine. So that would be a place to start, is take a people Reiki class, learn some self-treatment, and then you can read my book. Or, I have a lot of online classes, and I also have, through Shelter Animal Reiki Association, we actually have a network of teachers all across the world who also can teach this Let Animals Lead approach. So you can always kind of start with a human Reiki class and then kind of bring the animal part in. So yeah, that would be my recommendation.
Perfect. And so I'll link this up in the show notes, but people can find you at animalreikisource.com.
Yes, I'm at animalreikisource.com, and Reiki is spelled Reiki. That word means spiritual energy, Reiki. Mm-hmm. And I have a section, I have a calendar of upcoming workshops. I actually do have an online level 1 class coming up in the fall. And cool. They're all limited to only 8 people, but I have 2 different sessions of that. So that's a possibility for anybody who wants to study with me. And then our other website, which has our other network of teachers, is Shelter Animal Reiki Association.org. And so that would be a place where you can see kind of our wider network and the other people. Maybe there is a SARA teacher in your neighborhood. You never know.
Never know. Yeah. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for sharing all this information and your experience. I know it's a short, quick, just bit of understanding Reiki, because it's such an amazing modality and something that I wish everybody used. But, if anybody has any questions, reach out to Kathleen directly, and I'll link all that information up as well so you can reach out to her. But thank you so much again for sharing all this amazing information.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm just always excited to share with dog lovers, because dogs are so sensitive to this energy, and they respond and heal so well with this support that we can learn to give them through meditation. It's really beautiful. So
it is.
Thank you so much.
Of course. All right. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Happy Dog Podcast.